In the epic saga of Dune, a story defined by the clash of power, prophecy, and identity, few characters are as quietly powerful and tragically overlooked as Princess Irulan Corrino. Though her presence in the original narrative is sparse, her role is profound. Irulan is a character forged by the political machinery of the Imperium, caught between the impossible expectations of her lineage and the cold ambitions of the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood. Her life, her fate, and her legacy demand deeper reflection. Welcome to Sand and Shadows, where we explore the sandy deserts of Dune and the shadows of the Galactic Empire. If you found this story moving, consider subscribing to Sand and Shadows for more deep dives into the overlooked and powerful figures of the Dune universe. Now back to the story. Irulan is the eldest daughter of Shaddam Corrino IV, the 81st Padishah Emperor, and Enuril, a Bene Gesserit of hidden rank. She was born into a household that valued calculation over affection, strategy over sentiment. As the Emperor's daughter, Irulan was never afforded the luxuries of choice or personal freedom. Instead, she was raised as a political instrument, her marriage potential a bargaining chip to cement alliances and secure imperial control. She was expected to be obedient, eloquent, intelligent, and above all, useful. Bene Gesserit training enhanced these traits. Irulan was taught to observe, to listen, to influence through subtle gestures and calculated words. She was meant to be a reverend mother, but never completed the transformation through the spice agony. Even in her education, she was a project left unfinished, valued more for her bloodline than for her capabilities. She lived with the illusion of power, but never truly held it. When Paul Atreides conquered the known universe and took the throne of the Imperium, he married Irulan, not out of love, but necessity. The political marriage allowed Paul to stabilize his rule and absorb the Corrino name into the Atreides dynasty. Yet, Irulan was never a wife in any real sense. Paul loved Chani, his Fremen concubine, with a devotion that left Irulan on the fringes of both his personal life and his legacy. This marriage of form, devoid of substance, left Irulan in a position both powerful and powerless. She was Empress in name, but excluded from the intimate sphere of her husband's life. Her frustration grew as she realized that the one thing the Bene Gesserit and the Corrinos both needed from her, an heir with Paul, would never be fulfilled. Paul refused to touch her, and her political usefulness waned. Desperate and under pressure from the Sisterhood, Irulan did something morally and personally devastating. She began to secretly administering contraceptives to Chani. For years, she drugged the Fremen woman, denying Paul the children he so desperately wanted. This betrayal was not born of malice, but of desperation, an attempt to claw back some measure of relevance, some vestige of control. It was an act that would cost her dearly. When Chani finally breaks through the chemical interference with a Fremen fertility diet and becomes pregnant, Irulan is ordered to take further steps, to induce an abortion. But here, Irulan draws the line. She refuses. Despite her upbringing, despite her training, despite the political pressure bearing down on her from the Bene Gesserit, Irulan chooses compassion. It is a defining moment. Paul is not ignorant of Irulan's actions. He knows she has harmed Chani, but also understands that she has inadvertently prolonged Chani's life. Through his prescient visions, he has seen paths filled with horror, torture, slavery, mass suffering. He knows Chani's death is inevitable, but Irulan's interference delayed it. In his own quiet way, Paul is sorrowfully grateful. When Chani dies giving birth to twins, Leto II and Ghanima, and Paul walks into the desert to meet his end, Irulan remains. She does not flee, she does not manipulate, she mourns. Alia, Paul's sister, remarks on Irulan's unexpected grief. Wailing, giving moisture to the dead, she swears she loved him and knew it not. Irulan turns away from the Sisterhood and devotes herself to House Atreides. She helps raise Paul and Chani's children. She becomes their protector, their historian. Her loyalty, once coerced and conditional, becomes voluntary and heartfelt. She is no longer the Emperor's daughter or the Bene Gesserit's project. She is simply a guardian. In Children of Dune, we see Irulan caught between old loyalties and newfound purpose. Her sister, Wensia, plots to murder Leto and Ghanima in her last-ditch effort to reclaim Corrino power. Irulan, however, remains loyal to the children. Even when mistrusted by Alia and treated as a remnant of a deposed house, she serves the Atreides' cause faithfully. Her transformation is extraordinary. She moves from a political pawn to a maternal figure, from a manipulator to a protector. Her arc is one of redemption and quiet strength. She never becomes a warrior or a ruler, but she becomes something more enduring, a symbol of dignity and resilience. And yet, from the very beginning of the saga, we are introduced to her in an unconventional way. The epigraphs at the start of each chapter in the original novel Dune are attributed to Irulan. Before she appears on the page, she shapes the narrative. Her voice frames the legend of Muad'Dib. She is, in a way, the author of Paul's myth. This narrative device reveals something essential. Irulan is both inside and outside the story. She's part of the unfolding drama, but also its chronicler. She sees Paul not as a god, but as a man. Her writings become the lens through which the universe views Muad'Dib. In visual adaptations, Irulan is given more depth than in the original novel. The 2000 miniseries, for instance, portrays her as a nuanced character, intelligent, calculating, but also deeply human. Julie Cox's portrayal of Irulan adds dimension to her actions, depicting her as both a spy and a scholar, a woman who must navigate the dangerous terrain of court politics and personal loss. There's a particularly striking moment in the miniseries where Irulan infiltrates Feyd-Rauta's inner circle. She plays the seductress to extract vital information, only to slip back into her reserved virginal persona once the task is complete. This duality captures the essence of who Irulan is, a woman who can perform any role required of her, but who privately yearns for authenticity. Despite the political nature of her marriage to Paul, Irulan's tragedy is not just in being unloved, but in being unseen. She is present at key moments in history, yet always sidelined. She writes the story of a man who would never love her, raises children that are not her own, and defends a legacy that never fully embraced her. Her love for Paul, if it existed, was never requited. Her loyalty to the Atreides, however, was ultimately her own choice. She could have returned to the Corrinos, she could have manipulated the twins, she could have sought power. Instead, she chose care, she chose history, she chose memory. Irulan Corrino is not a hero in the traditional sense. She does not command armies or lead revolutions, but she is something just as powerful. She is a witness, a preserver, a reminder that history is not only shaped by those who wield swords, but also by those who record it. She is the voice that outlives empires. The Dune saga is filled with grand gestures and cosmic destinies, but in Irulan we find a different kind of story, one of quiet perseverance, of personal growth in the face of isolation, of a woman who has given everything but love and chose to become something greater anyway. Her fate may not be glorious, it may not be triumphant, but it is deeply human. And that, perhaps, is the most powerful legacy of all. If you found this story moving, consider subscribing to Sand and Shadows for more deep dives into the overlooked and powerful figures of the Dune universe. Irulan may not have been the hero of her own story, but by telling it, we give her the recognition she was always denied. Thank you for watching, and remember, even the quietest voices can echo through time.